There's a guy who likes games, and the best that he's played are the ones that you'll see on the top 100. Repeat that part. Top 100 games. Good. I get a little bit freaky. That's right, I'm a little bit freaky.
Hello, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the only board game review show that before his death was endorsed by Nicolae Ceausescu. My name is Cody, and welcome to my top 100 games of all time as of August 2014. Today we're going to be covering my number 80 through number 71. So without any further ado, let's get into it! Now, I have to point out that it's interesting, I wasn't even thinking of this when I made the list, and now when I'm looking at it, it's like, well, that's weird. I have three games that are very similar thematically coming up, quite a bit different mechanically in many ways, but very similar thematically, and they just happen to arrive right there, 80, 79, and 78. But let's go ahead and get started with my number 80. My number 80 is a game from Flying Frog Productions. I talked last time about Fortune and Glory, but this game is A Touch of Evil. Now, A Touch of Evil is a game that is set in the colonies, colonial New England. It has, I really think this game was inspired in many respects by the Sleepy Hollow film with Johnny Depp. I really think that that film provided the basis for this game. Essentially what you're doing is you're trying to go around this town, you can play cooperatively or competitively. I find I enjoy it more cooperatively. But you're going around this town trying to find various clues and items and weapons to help you hunt down a monster. And the monster could be a headless horseman type character, wonder where they got that from. It could be a vampire or a werewolf, and so you're working together to try to do this, but at the same time there's town elders that may have secrets, that may be secretly in collusion with the monster. There's all sorts of different fun things that can pop up, and this is a game that I really think highlights what Flying Frog does best, and that is kind of tell these fun, pulpy kind of stories. And really a fun game. Enjoy it quite a bit. That is A Touch of Evil, my number 80. So kind of sticking with that horror theme, and indeed a cooperative horror theme, here my number 79 is a game from Victory Point Games called Darkest Night. Now Darkest Night is a great game where essentially you're in a realm, a medieval realm, a fantasy realm that has been essentially overrun by the forces of evil. And there is a necromancer on the board. There's about 6 or 7 different locations on the board, and you can do actions, you can travel to the different locations and do different things. You're searching for keys that can unlock these weapons that will help you defeat the necromancer. But every time the necromancer visits a place, these monsters and stuff begin to accrue, and you have to fight them. And so you're fighting them. You're looking for these weapons, and you're trying to initially avoid the necromancer because he can be very powerful. But eventually, you will have to face him and defeat him if you want to win the game. Darkest Night is a very difficult game to beat, in my experience. It's very hard. It's not an easy game by any means. And I think that's a good thing. A cooperative game that was easy wouldn't be worth playing. You want a cooperative game to give you a challenge, and this one definitely does. I believe there are 3 expansions. I've only played the 1 expansion. I liked the characters it brought, but it had another mechanic. I think it was quests where you would go on a quest would kind of give you a time limit and add something else you'd have to overcome, or negative consequences would happen. That, to me, just made it overwhelming. That made it too hard. I liked the new characters a lot. I thought the expansion was worth it for the new characters, and I'd be eager to play the next 2 expansions as well. Maybe I'll pick those up later down the line, but it's a solid game. I really like it a lot. That is my number 79, Darkest Night.
The Discriminating Gamer's Top 100 Games.
Okay, kind of sticking with this horror theme is my number 78, and this game is called Witch of Salem. Witch of Salem from Mayfair Games sees players working cooperatively in order to help a warlock kind of shut down portals around the city of Arkham so that evil Cthulhu monsters don't come in and destroy the world. Now wait a second, you're saying, this is Arkham Horror. No, 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 it's not. This is Witch of Salem, and it's very similar, kind of thematically, to Arkham Horror. Cooperative game with the Cthulhu universe, you're in Arkham. But it's a very, very different game. In fact, Witch of Salem is a Euro. This is what Arkham Horror would be if Arkham Horror was a Euro. So Witch of Salem it's very interesting, it's very fun, but one of the problems you will find with Witch of Salem is something that a lot of people have remarked about, and that is there's one rule in this game that makes sense mechanically, but absolutely no sense thematically. And that is you're going around, opening these gates, looking at these gates to see if, you know, where they are that you can shut them down. Now, it's a cooperative game, but the rule says you can't share the information for those portals. It doesn't make sense. If you're working together, you would want to share that information. And because you can't do that, and again, it makes sense mechanically, because then it would be too easy, but what it leads to, what that rule leads to is a lot of, you know, should I go here? Should I open this? You know, so it's wonky. It's a very wonky rule. Despite that, it's a very, very fun game. I do like it a lot. So that is my number 78, Witch of Salem. Alright, my number 77 is a game that's actually been around for a long time, but I only recently played it about a year or two ago, and I found it was really, really a lot of fun. And this is Scotland Yard. I believe it's currently published by Ravensburger. Now, Scotland Yard is a game where you and your friends are trying to hunt down and find Mr. X. And Mr. X, of course, is played by another person who, the whole game board is a map of London. And essentially, he's trying to move throughout London to these different locations, and you're trying to close in and find him. This is a game that can be incredibly, incredibly frustrating. It can be incredibly frustrating if you're looking for Mr. X, and you know you've got him in a very tight spot, and then he just seems to disappear. And suddenly, there's tons of different places he could have gone. So you feel like you're closing in, but then he gets out. It's like, ah. But that's the fun of it, too. And particularly it's fun if you're playing Mr. X and you're making those dodges. So it's a very fun game. Like I say, it's been around for a long time. But that is Scotland Yard from Ravensburger, my number 97. My number 76 is a war game, another light war game. I mentioned last time, my number 90 was Julius Caesar. This game is very similar. It's Pax Baltica. Pax Baltica is from GMT Games, and it is a war game set in the early Enlightenment period, the late 1600s, early 1700s, late middle period, early whatever, that period. I'm a historian. And it's it's the wars around the Baltic. So it's the wars between Russia and Sweden primarily, but the German states are pulled in, various other powers are pulled in. It's a very fun block war game. There's things like attrition, you know, the winter sets in, that can cause problems. So it's very fun. Again, block mechanics, so there's the fog of war because the blocks are just facing you. You rotate the blocks to determine your strength. There's a lot of different scenarios you can play, and it's just generally a very, very fun, in-depth war game without being overwhelming, and I really like those kinds of war games. So that is, of course, my number 76, Pax Baltica. No discriminating gamers, top 100 games. My number 75 is a very fun game that's fairly accessible to a lot of people. Everybody I've played it with has really enjoyed it. And this is Tsuro of the Seas. Now, you may have played the original Tsuro, which is a great game, but I prefer Tsuro of the Seas. It's a game, a tile laying game. You're on ships, and you lay the tiles with pathways, and you move the ships along the pathways, and then when somebody else lays a tile, you move your ship along there. And you're trying to avoid not just going off the board, but there's also monsters that move around the board in this game that you're trying to avoid them as well. And so the mechanic where you roll dice, and it's a grid system to see where the monsters go, and then you're laying the tiles to try to you know, move away from them or get your opponents to move to them. It's just very, very fun. It's a very fun, very engaging game. There's a great expansion to it, Veterans of the Seas, which gives you weapons that you can use against the sea monsters and some other cool tiles that you can lay. So I really enjoy that. It's a very fun game from Calliope Games, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but that is my number 75, Tsuro of the Seas.
There was a discriminating gamer, and he had 100 favorite games.
My number 74 is a game that is now out of print, I believe, and you know, it's one of those games that was a lot of fun. I really liked it, but I just felt it never really got its due. It never really caught on to the public imagination the way I thought it would. Now, this was a game that was published by Fantasy Flight a few years ago, and it's called Dust. Now, this is not Dust Tactics, which is the minis game. This is Dust. This is the original board game, which is set in kind of the science fiction World War II universe. Apparently the Nazis and then the Allies and the Soviets got a hold of alien technology in Antarctica, so instead of tanks they've got walkers. But essentially it's very much like an Axis and Allies kind of game, but with this kind of futuristic bent. There's fun cards and characters that enter into it. Really enjoy it. Really just a fun, good, strategic, fairly light war game. But it's fun. Like it a lot. I wish it had caught on more. I haven't played it in a long time. I need to play it again sometime. But that is my number 90, or pardon me, my number 74, Dust. Number 73 is another game from Victory Point Games. This is one I played just fairly recently and reviewed fairly recently. This is a game called Crisis 2020. Crisis 2020 is, again, another light war game that is set in kind of an American Civil War in the 21st century. Now, in this game, you are attempting to, you're either playing the government forces or these rebel forces, and you're trying to win control of the United States. There's many different scenarios here. You can, in later scenarios, you know, Canada comes in, NATO comes in, Asian nations come in, Mexico comes in, and there's all sorts of funny things that can happen. You're playing cards that can affect your rolls, and the terrain factors into it. You consult charts based on your rolls and your attack factor. You don't just do conventional military attacks, you also do cyber attacks, and they have different kind of consequences that can come with them. So it's a very fun game, really enjoyed it. That is Crisis 2020 from Victory Point Games, my number 73. Number 72 is another Victory Point Games title. I'm a big fan of Victory Point Games. They're a great company. And this is another one of their States of Siege games. Now, you'll recall my number 99, I believe, was Cruel Necessity. And Cruel Necessity is a great States of Siege game where, you know, the various enemy armies are coming toward London and that. Well, this game, my number 72, is Hapsburg Eclipse. Hapsburg Eclipse is set in World War I, which is one of my favorite time periods, and you take on the role of the evil, evil, evil Austrians. The evil Austrians. Anyway, you're playing the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and essentially you have enemy forces coming at you. The Russians are advancing on you, Bulgarians, Romanians, Italians, and they're moving along these tracks, and you're trying to force them all back. We only get so many actions per turn, but at the same time, there's potential for revolt within your empire. You know, the Croats and various other ethnic minorities within the empire can revolt. If they all revolt at the same time, to a certain extent, you lose. If any of the tracks reach Vienna, you lose. And so it's a balancing act, and it's a desperate one. And these event cards keep happening, and it can be a very, very, very tense game. It is a solitaire game, it is a solo game, but it's a lot of fun. I certainly recommend it. That is my number 72, Hapsburg Eclipse. My number 71 is another co-op game here. This is kind of a different and unusual one if you haven't played it. This is Space Alert from Rio Grande Games. Now, Space Alert is a very, very, very intense game because it's done in real time. And essentially you have to have a CD player and you listen to an audio track that kind of tells you exactly what happens during the scenario. But you and your friends are on the bridge of a spaceship, on the entirety of the spaceship, I should say. And as the aliens are attacking or other problems are going on, you have to work together by laying certain cards down in front of you that represent certain actions you're doing in the crisis. And then the scenario ends. And then the fun begins, because then what you have to do is each of you reveals, in order, what actions you took. And as you reveal those actions that you took, you then have to kind of go and see if you did everything correctly. And if you didn't do things correctly, if you misplaced, or if you placed a wrong action in the wrong spot, it can completely screw up your subsequent sequence of movements, and your ship is destroyed. So it's a lot of fun, very tense, a very fun game. That is my number 71, Space Alert from Rio Grande Games. The Discriminating Gamers Top 100 games. And that is my top 100 games of all time, numbers 80 through 71. Stick with us, and hopefully before too long, I will have my numbers 70 through 61 up, and we can enjoy those. So I'm really, really having a lot of fun talking with you and bringing you my top 100 games list. Please, 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 again, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, go ahead and leave a comment here on YouTube or on our website or on Facebook, and let me know what you think. I'm very interested to hear what you guys think of my top 100 games. So in the meantime, please, please, please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. The Discriminating Gamer. The Discriminating Gamer, baby.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going.
Start repeating again. And these games.
Oh, I was looking at something.
That's fine. Just repeat. And these games that you play are the best. So he says. To be viewed. On YouTube. Are the top. Repeat that part.
Sorry.
Top 100 games. There's a guy who likes games, and the best that he's played are the ones that just say to be viewed on YouTube, and the games that he plays are the best that he says are the top 100 games.
I thought it was around.
It was supposed to be.